I want to close camp. Parents, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to work with your sons. As I mentioned at the beginning, we take this as a very serious and a great honor to be able to teach your sons this game. Because we see it all as coaches. Okay? We got a high school coach right back here with Coach Harris, and all these college coaches that have played at the high school level, collegiate level, and now are coaching. But we see this as a tool to help build these boys into young men. And we really appreciate that honor and trust that you give to us, okay, to talk about this. You guys, you're learning through this game. You can learn so much through this game, okay? Please also make sure you understand the sacrifices your parents made for you to be here, both monetarily, also through time, all that kind of stuff. When I was at camp, when I was a freshman in high school, I was at this Jeff Trickey quarterback camp. And Jeff is a great friend of mine. He's a mentor of mine. I love that man. And he told this story. He asked the question. He said, what would you do? Excuse me. What would you do if in 10 minutes, right now my watch is 10:57, it's a little fast. But let's say in 11:07 on my watch, in 10 minutes, you were all to die an untimely, tragic death. We're all going to die. He offered that question to me as a freshman in high school. And I never pondered that before. See, one of my jobs, I'm a teacher at a Catholic school, and I taught theology for a while, and one thing I tried to teach was that the reality is that someday we're all going to die. I kind of knew that as a freshman, but I never even thought about it. But to think about it, in 10 minutes, I'm going to pass away. What would I do? Now, Jeff, being a great teacher and a great coach himself, he said, this is what I would do. I would take my son. At the time, he had a young son, very similar age to my sons, both Patrick and Andrew. I would take my sons, and I would start, right now, we all have cell phones. We'd dig out our cell phones, and we'd start dialing. Jeff said he would take his son, run into the school, lock the door behind him, and start dialing. And he started, first of all, with his wife and his daughter. And he'd call them up and tell them how much he loved them. And then after that, he'd hang up the phone after, I'm sure, tears would be falling down his face. And then he would go and he'd start dialing his sister. And he'd start dialing every person that he could think of in his close-knit family and tell them how much he loved them until that 10 minutes was up. I would do the same thing. I would grab my two sons and I'd call my wife. I have 4 other girls at home. We have 6 kids, beautiful kids. I'd tell them how much I love them. I'd call my parents. I'd call my brother. I'd call everyone I could and tell them how much I love them until 11:07. But as Jeff told me when I was a freshman, most of the time we don't get that 10 minutes. We won't get that 10 minutes. And man, it just kind of hit me in my heart. Like, yeah, he's right. He's right. So that year, freshman year in high school, when you're still kind of insecure, right? I made a point to tell my parents I love them, even when I was upset. I started telling my grandparents. I was very blessed growing up in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. I had all 4 of my grandparents living in the same small town. I would tell them how much I loved them. I got in a habit of doing it. To the point when all my buddies, when all my friends, I remember on senior night, basketball, right? The whole town's there. Sitting up there in the student section, it was packed, and it's parents' night. I was the only person that would walk out to the floor. I gave a flower to my mom. I gave her a big hug and a kiss, and I told her I loved her. I shook my dad's hand. I gave him a hug and a kiss, and I told him I loved him. Everyone else was kind of like, to their parents, hogwash. That's not being a man. That's being a coward, because you're afraid of someone picking on you. And I was so glad I did that, because what happened was my junior year in college, the summer before my junior year, I'm slated to start at Northwest Missouri State. My grandfather, Stan Kramer was about 6'5", about 260 pounds. He was a big man. He played for the Green Bay Packers in 1946. All-State, was the last person to lead Sturgeon Bay High School to the state championship game in basketball. I wanted to be like my grandpa. I wanted to play professional football like my grandfather. He was someone I wanted to be like. I wanted to emulate him in everything. He was a man's man. He loved his wife, he loved his children, and he loved his grandkids, his 2 grandsons. So much so that he didn't miss a game of mine or a practice. Drove my mom crazy because he'd call right during dinner time to tell me I need to put more march on my free throws. Okay? But man, I love my grandfather. I talked to him 3 times a week. I would talk to him Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. We'd talk about everything, football, life, everything. And that summer beforehand, I'm talking to him on a Sunday evening. During that time, I took summer school. I was lifting and training, getting ready for our football season. I had a job. I had all these things going on. And that night, I had to study for a test. So after about 5 minutes, I said, Grandpa, I hate to cut this short, but I have to get going. I have early training, and then I have a test tomorrow, all that kind of stuff I have to study for. He said, Chris, no problem. I'll talk to you on Tuesday. I said, Grandpa, I love you. He said, Chris, I love you too. That was on June 6th, 1997. So I went to class that next morning. I went, took my test. I ended up lifting weights, did all my things in the morning, came back in the afternoon to have lunch at my house, and we had answering machines back then, okay? And so it's blinking, means I have a message, and so I hit the button, and it's my mom. It says, Chris, give me a call. I need to talk to you immediately. I'm like, okay, I can tell something's wrong in her voice. So I call her back, and I said, hey, Mom, this is Chris. What's up? What's happening? She said, Chris, I don't know how to tell you this, but your Grandpa Stan died this morning of a massive heart attack and sitting in his chair. And I was like, what? How? Right? We always ask that question, or why? Like my grandpa. The guy who, when I was 6 years old, I can still remember going to my first Green Bay Packer game with him. And after the game, everyone's getting out of the stadium, and here's this big man carrying me, 6 years old, out of the stadium so I don't get trampled. I can still remember having my arms around this guy, my grandpa. And now he's dead. We dreamed of him coming down and watching me play college football. That's all he talked about. Him and Grandma getting an RV and coming down to the games and all this stuff. And after I got off the phone, I went upstairs and I just bawled my eyes out. I cried. My grandpa was gone. But then all of a sudden, after about a half hour, 30 minutes, it just hit me. There was this peace that came over me. And you know what? I told my grandpa how much I loved him. And you know what? He reciprocated. He did the same thing to me. He said, Chris, I love you. Man, I just had this peace. I was still sad. But man, I had this peace. On the flip side, I told you about my brother. He was going to be a senior in high school that year. He was down at a camp at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. At the same moment that my grandfather died, our grandfather died, my brother was sitting in the head football coach's office, Barry Alvarez, getting offered a full ride scholarship to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And you know what? In 1942, when my grandfather graduated from high school, war's still going on, World War II. His parents didn't have enough money. And so he had to turn down a full ride scholarship to the University of Wisconsin to play football. He had to turn it down to stay home and work for the family. And now his grandson just got offered a full ride scholarship to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Well, my brother was ecstatic. He calls home right away. He gets out, calls mom and dad, and immediately says, "Where's Grandpa? I got to tell Grandpa. This is a dream come true. He's got a scholarship to Madison." And they said, they didn't have the heart to tell him right then. They said, "Nick, we don't know where he is, but we'll make sure you get in contact with him." Of course, Nick the next day, "Where's Grandpa?" And my uncle, thank goodness, was down there and told him in person that Grandpa Stan had died the day before. He had the same reaction as me. I'm talking about a 6'2", 245-pound, mean linebacker, just bawling his eyes out. He bawled and he bawled, but he never had that peace. He never had that peace come over him like I had. Because he had never heard this story before. He had never heard that question before. He never told his parents, even though he loves them. He never told his grandpa or his grandparents how much he loved them. So to this day, after being in the league for 8 years, and now my brother has a beautiful family. He has a beautiful, gorgeous wife and a 8-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. Beautiful family. This big man, this man's man, right? Former linebacker, doesn't miss an opportunity to tell his brother, to tell his wife, his parents, his children, his 2 nephews, how much he loves them. Guys, don't miss an opportunity yourself to miss the people you love, or to tell the people you love how much you love them. Don't miss that opportunity. You don't know when that 10 minutes is coming. It will be sad, it will be tragic, and when it happens, but gentlemen, you will have that peace to know that you told the people you loved how much you loved. That starts tonight. Start tonight, maybe even on your way home, or maybe right after this game. Go over and tell your parents how much you appreciate them sending you to this game, how much you love them, how much you appreciate everything they do for you. Sometimes it's rocky, sometimes it's hard, but love is not a feeling. Love is not a feeling, it's a decision we make. Okay? So make that decision every single day and understand how much they love you. Okay? I can't thank you enough, parents, for everything. Guys, I can't thank you for all your attitude and effort. And I can't wait to, as speaking for the coaches, can't wait to have you guys back here next year. Okay? Quarterbacks, I'd love to see you afterwards, okay, personally, individually. And guys, don't be afraid. Some of the coaches are still back here to shake their hands and tell them thank you. Parents, thank you very much for everything. And we'll